scrimmage in the college football playoff race. When you saw this and you saw Bill's reasoning, do you agree that Joe Milton is this all-encompassing, mercurial talent that could completely shift the college football playoff race depending on how he plays?
I originally, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, this is just absurd. But then I got to thinking about it, and it really does kind of make a lot of sense because, you know, if Tennessee's in the CFP race, that means Joe Milton's had one heck of a season.
Mm.
That's just how I look at it. So he's such a boomer bust player in my eyes. I mean, he could just be good. That's for sure a possibility. But I feel like if Tennessee's in the CFP race and this is talking about the CFP race, then Joe Milton's probably one of the biggest players in college football. So for him to be one on this list makes sense to me because if Tennessee's in the CFP race, Joe Milton's been that dude. Maybe I wouldn't put him on. Maybe I put an Ohio State quarterback one. I don't know. But, Tennessee has to beat Bama or Georgia to be in the CFP race. And to do that, Milton's got to be a dog. So I think it makes sense. He would be at least, in the top 3 or so.
What do you think, Ryan?
I would agree with that. And you have the element that Tennessee plays Georgia and they play Alabama, and Georgia's schedule is so bad that if Tennessee beats them and the way the chips fall, that could be enough to keep Georgia out of the college football playoff. I mean, if Georgia loses to Tennessee, here's the number of good wins they're going to have: 0. They still might get in with it, but it could. What's that?
Ole Miss is a good win.
Yeah, it could be. It could be a good win. It could be
on the road. Maybe
at home. No, it's in Athens. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, look. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't mean it's not a good win, but an offense that's kind of predicated on running the ball. Good luck going into Athens and being competitive. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense in some ways. But I kind of tend to agree with Jack. There's been so much talk that it's going to be boomer bust for Milton, and I get that. Like, I understand that. I think still the most logical thing is it's going to end up being somewhere in the middle, or it's going to be a thing. The comparison I think I made on here before, like Bo Wallace, where he's good, and then a couple games it's disastrous. It falls apart for him. So I understand the logic. I'm a little hesitant to think Tennessee's in the range to be that Joe Milton's going to be good enough to make Tennessee a real serious college football playoff contender.
I also think he could be good and it doesn't matter. Like, good can still be 9-3. Like, Joe could have a pretty good year.
Right, but then he's not relevant on this list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I think the idea that people think where it's like, if Joe lives up to his potential, then Tennessee's play. I'm like, no, I don't think so. I think Joe could live up to the potential, live up to a lot of the hype this year, and Tennessee could still lose several games and not even be a factor really for the CFB, because I think there's a path where the defense is still bad enough where it doesn't do enough, or the offensive line, which we're seeing, if they take a step back and Joe's getting killed and it's not really his fault and you're seeing Joe play really well, like that might be out of his wheelhouse. And also just the schedule, like what if he has a duel against Georgia and Alabama and he loses both, but he plays well in both those games, and I mean, you're not sniffing the playoff at that point. So I think there's a path too for Milton to have a good year and it not really affect the playoff race. I don't think he has to be either. If he's awesome, then Tennessee's a playoff team, and if he's bad, then I think there is a way around that.
But you just said that if Milton still plays great and Tennessee loses to Georgia and Bama, which is a possibility, that means Tennessee probably loses close to Alabama and Tuscaloosa, and by the time Georgia game rolls around, CFP rankings will have already been a thing, so they'll be in the race.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they'll be in it. I think. Well, it's so hard because I'm still at you asked, I want to do like a daily poll to see, like, do I think Tennessee's going to beat Florida? And just to get a running tally in my head of where I'm at going into the game. If I had to guess daily what I've landed on more, it's definitely Florida wins in that game. And like, it scares me. I was listening to my way home, like Will and Tyler on 991 The Sports Animal, and Tyler is just like dead set on Tennessee winning at Florida, where he's like just bang the over with the early line, everything else. I'm like, not a chance. I can't do it. There's no way I'm even I'm not even close to being there. And I understand like everything about Florida coming in this year, but like everything to start this offseason and the hype around all of this and the question marks I still have, there's no way that I can be that confident. And then you're looking at like a 9-3 potentially. I think my gut tells me the best case scenario for this Tennessee team this year is 9-3. That is my best case scenario for this team, is where I'm leaning more days than not. That's the best I can do mentally. I hope that changes, and I'm sure week 1 I'll just be like, playoff, let's go, when they're just bombing Virginia and then Austin P, and they outscore them both 135-7 over 2 weeks. I'm like, sorry, Vols are back, don't want to hear it, and gonna lose my mind going to the Florida weekend. But as of right now, before games have happened and I've gotten lost in the orange sauce, that's just where I'm at right now.
Best case scenario, 9-3.
Yeah, you're pretty pessimistic if you think truly best case scenario is 9-3. And I'll say it again, I've said it here before. If Tennessee loses to Florida, they're not going 9-3. That's a ridiculous notion that you think Tennessee going to Florida and then beat everybody else on their schedule, not named Georgia and Alabama.
So you think 8-4, 7-5 is more likely if they lose to Florida?
Yes, the 9-3, yeah.
So who
definitely
do they lose
8-4.
to?
7-5 is probably similar.
You said last week there's no way they're losing to A&M, so they lose to Kentucky if they lose to Florida? South Carolina?
I didn't say there's no way. I just said that's my stone cold lock of a pick. I mean, obviously, if I'm looking at a logical
Stone cold lock. Nothing changes Stone Cold.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to win that game because a lot points to it. But sure, South Carolina, Kentucky, Missouri, even like Missouri is just as good as Florida, and have fun playing there in mid-November in Columbia when it's just miserably cold and your season's not at a very good spot. You're not competitive anymore. Like if Florida's lost, UConn, Vanderbilt. Those are the games after Florida on the schedule that aren't up in the air.
So the UTSA is up in the air if they lose to Florida.
Yeah, UTSA is up in the air if they beat Florida. I mean, I think they'll beat UTSA, but it's up in the air.
I mean, you could argue UTSA may be like close to being as good as better than Florida. Like Florida.
You want to talk about losing goodwill? Tennessee loses to Florida, this Florida team, and then loses a home game to G5 UTSA right after. Like when we talk about like, oh, it could get ugly enough where we're like, you know, this fan base, you lose those 2 games back to back. I'm not kidding. Like just that week would be insanity after. Like he's out. Like everyone's just like, we're out. It was a fun 3-year ride. He put us in a better place. It's time to go for the next guy, the final piece with a good roster. You know that's how it would go, where it's like he guided us out of the darkness from the end of the Pruitt era, but it's time to move on. We've tapped out our potential. Like if you lose those 2 games, he can't lose those 2. That's brutal. Can't do it. Can't. Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think if Tennessee loses to Florida, I don't think I would necessarily pick UTSA to beat them. I just think it's in play. I'll have to you, Jack. Sorry.
No, I think if Florida, like, are you talking about? I mean, yeah, fans will be mad at Josh, but if they lose to Florida and UTSA, I think Joe completely just falls apart in Gainesville, and then against UTSA, falls apart again the first half, and it's unsalvageable.
Yeah, I mean, he's gone at that point. Like, you can't do a whole year if you're staring at 7-5. It might as well just move on to Nico and give him the reps. Like, you might.
I think just as likely as that is Tennessee doesn't stop UTSA for 4 quarters, and Tim Banks is a dead man walking the last 2 months of the season, basically.
Man, I'm telling you, I cannot wait for these games because there are sneaky.
Tennessee can hold them in the 20s.
What's that, Jack?
Said if Troy can hold UTSA to 12, Tennessee can hold them in the 20s. I don't think it'll be.
Yeah, I mean, they should. I think Tim Banks has done a good job overall. But when his unit completely disappeared with Tennessee in the college football playoff race, you do that again and lose a game you shouldn't lose. Like that's how you get fired. Unless your defense top 15 in the country, which Tennessee certainly hasn't been. That's not Tim Banks' fault. The talent's not there. That's why, again, I think he's done a good job. But you lay multiple eggs in 2 seasons, changes happen. This has been a really negative podcast. We're not.
Yeah, we've gotten in the weeds here.
We're not getting people excited.
I'm terrified. Like the offensive line stuff, the scrimmage results that came out today, listening to some hypo quotes, or I'm like reading between the lines between coaches speak and what actually happened here.
Words.
You can't do it.
You took 5 words and said this Tennessee team can't beat Florida in Gainesville. Can't do it. Those 5, the 3 paragraphs. Josh Heupel talked very glowingly about Joe Milton, but then said 4-minute offense he needs to be better. That means Joe Milton was awful and can't play at this level. That's what
I moved on. That's what I read. I'm like, uh-oh.
You said, "Oh, Nico's way better than he was in the spring."
Well, I think what he said that I think the thing about Nico though is he doesn't make the same mistake twice, and he's a fast learner. Like that tells me clearly he is very happy with where Nico is. Like I think that's what I took away from that. It's like he is very happy about Nico's development, and I think he came across with that line still a little nervous about Joe in big games, and so that's what I took away. That was that. There was a coach's speak there where I'm like, there is something there because the Nico stuff was completely glowing.
I mean, sure, it was 4 words, and I think it honestly makes sense that like Joe Milton hasn't started a ton of games in his career, so the stuff like that, the 4-minute drill, the 4-minute offense, 2-minute drill, like that's gonna be dicey. Like I think that's just fair. We talk about him managing the little things, the little parts of the game in the offense, and I think Heupel has expressed a lot of confidence in his understanding of the offense and his ability to get them in the right plays and the right tempo and all that good stuff. But that type of stuff, they practice it, but it's different when the games are on. And for a guy that's a 6-year senior and hasn't played a ton of football, that's going to be a learning process, and he's going to have to get better at it as the season goes along. And when you talk about the first 4 games of the season we just talked about are going to be catastrophic if they lose both of them and really bad if they just lose one of them, like that's a fair concern, I think.
Jack, to get away from Ryan's pessimism and cynicism, because it's kind of bringing me down a little bit, the black uniforms, are they Tennessee's best?
Oh, come on. We covered this last week. I said the grays
We didn't say black. We were talking about smoky grays last week.
I know. Then I said they were better in dark mode, so my answer is no. Black jerseys aren't the best. And you gave me crap for like 5 minutes, so here it comes again. But no,
this is a two-parter.
Are not the best.
All right, pivoting away from Jack again, who's wearing all black and just throwing heat right back at. Goodness gracious.